6D, discussion and possible action, including direction to executive office to return with a plan to make most Mendocino County business licenses optional. And this was sponsored by Supervisor Williams.
So in reviewing some of the chronologies of clients of West Company sitting on their board this last year, it became apparent that the business licensing process is an impediment for new businesses, especially small businesses. And it came to my attention that Lake County doesn't require business licenses in many of the instances where we do. Say for body piercing or selling Christmas trees, they do. For food handling, they do. They've pinpointed specific business cases where there may be protection to the public by having a business license process. But say hypothetically, Supervisor McCowan in his retirement decides to write his memoirs, and he does it from a coffee shop. He does it sitting in the audience here at the board chambers. Maybe he edits a little bit at home. He goes to get a business license because he's not an outlaw. He wants to be in compliance. He pays $40, not a problem. That's not a big business impediment. But he also pays $339 to planning and building. Why planning and building? Well, they want to check his office to make sure it's in compliance. He says, I don't have an office. I write in coffee shops. I write wherever I am. I bring a notepad. No, we're going to use his primary residence as his business location because he doesn't rent office space. They're going to review and see if he has any code violations on his home. Even though he's not bringing the public in, he doesn't have any employees. This process can take weeks, sometimes months, sometimes many months. And so when you compare, we say Mendocino County is 82% of the businesses are small businesses, and we have a business-friendly climate. Actually, Lake County has that business-friendly climate where you live in Lake County and you want to write a book, you don't need a business license. You're a watercolor artist and you want to sell your artwork, you don't need a business license. They presume these types of businesses are operating legally. Whereas it appears we've gone overboard and it's actually harming the incubation of new small businesses in our county. So I use the word most. I think we do need some business licenses, but I think we could model our approach after Lake County's. Theirs seems to be successful, and they've found a balance between protecting the public and encouraging business development. And so with this item, I would ask staff to look at using Lake County as a model and determining which types of businesses need to be licensed in our county to protect the public.
Any other comments?
No.
Supervisor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, with business licenses, I had always thought that it was meant to protect public health and ensure that the business meets its minimum requirements in whatever field they're in. I know there's a big discussion nationally about requiring licenses, and I guess California, as a state, requires certain licensing in many, many fields and kind of leads the nation in that requirement. So I'm just not sure what Lake County has, and it'd be nice if it would have been attached, whatever their ordinance is, rules for business license, and also fees. And before I'm ready to make a decision, though, I'd like to hear from staff, because I don't think this is the norm on a lot of business licenses that are applied for.
And it seems, okay. CEO.
Chair Hashak, I was thinking that you wanted me to respond to Supervisor Brown's comment.
Right, I do.
Okay, all right, thank you. The way that I look at this, I look at this as an opportunity for the different departments, the Treasurer's Office, the Executive Office, Planning and Building, and the Auditor's Office, to get together and really look at our business licenses and what we do, and look at the process, and also the money that comes in and what that covers, what it doesn't cover, and then come back to this board with the full report. And that's what I look at. I know that there is a lot of concern. I can tell you that some of the departments that are sitting in this room right now on this particular item have some concerns about this. This item, in my opinion, doesn't say to eliminate the business plans or the business licenses. What this says is to look at a plan, to make them optional. Now, whether we could do that or not, I'm not certain we can. I'm not certain this board would want to. But I think the process of pulling the departments together, look at the business licenses, look at what we do, how we do it, we can only come back with a better plan and a better process. So from my perspective, as long as we have the time, this board doesn't want this back in 30 days, we have some time to look at this. I don't see a problem with this item at all. I think it can only benefit us as far as trying to create some efficiencies. So thank you.
Supervisor Jordy.
Well, I would like to hear from county staff today and at a future meeting. And I'd like to, I'm hoping that if we give direction, that we give direction that to look at a number of different things. So the optional language is here, but I'd also like us to consider the value that I believe there is in protecting neighborhoods from certain types of business activities that are commercial in scale and may or may not be appropriate for different neighborhoods. And as most people know, a home is in most cases a person's single greatest asset, and that they have, and so they obviously get very defensive of protecting that asset, their home, and not wanting to see in many cases a large commercial operation next door, and they sometimes become surprised by what's going on next door. So I think I see the value in having some evaluation of something that is beyond, say, a small home business. And I think Supervisor Williams' example was what I think most people would call a small home business, and it would be more than that example, obviously. So anyway, so I would like us to look at that, and then I'd also like staff to look at the concept of once that evaluation was done, given the fact that the business license is $40 a year, and it's possible the county's not making any net money out of that $40 in reissuing that year after year. So maybe it's not a loss to the county general fund. Maybe it is. I don't know. If in year 2 and 3 and 4 that $40 was not paid again, but there may be a value in still having that business license issued initially, and a signature by the applicant saying, this is my business, these are the things I do. That evaluation takes place based on their zoning and their inappropriateness, and it's good in perpetuity unless they substantially change their business. So if someone starts writing a book and then wants to come in and I'm giving a gross example here, but wants to operate an asphalt plant, that business license doesn't carry forward to the other operation. And so anyway, so I think there's a number of things to look at, and I just want to make sure that we look at lots of angles on this issue, because I don't want us to unintentionally create a problem that none of us want to create.
And one of the things I've heard is that it's not just the cost of the building or the business permit, but actually the time it takes to get that from the applicants going to the office here, filling out the form, to actually getting the permit. Then could be up to 6 months, or it takes a long time that taxes aren't being collected, the business is on hold. And so I think that's a major issue. So if that could be wrapped into this scope of work and seeing how we can streamline that process too, that would help. Supervisor McCowan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And based on the correspondence submitted with this item from West Business Development Center, there's obviously a lot of work to be done, I think, to streamline the process. And it isn't the $40 for the business license, but for anyone in business or trying to go into business, time is money. So the longer that period stretches out, so I think there could be some work done to determine how can we better streamline the process. And for those people that work remotely, and increasingly there are more and more of them. That should be a checkbox that we don't need to come inspect your place of work because it's your laptop.
Right.
Could be other categories of business that, just a very quick review of zoning, if it's, and frankly, our zoning code is in need of review. Probably the greatest single thing we could do for economic development would be to review and update the zoning code, which is tremendously out of date, but we don't have staff currently to be able to go through and do that. But it's another one of these things that has grown and expanded over time. Hardly anything ever gets taken out. We just keep adding more stuff. There's a lot of complexity over what businesses are allowed where. And yet if you liberalize it too much, then you get complaints about where did this wine bar come from? But if it's in a business district, should that be an issue? One other wrinkle that the state has handed to us just recently, if we want to suddenly eliminate business licenses, and I'm not advocating for that, I don't think we have the information. There's so many other things tied to a business license. I think that's kind of the entry for code enforcement for one thing. But Senate Bill 205 mandates that when someone, as of January 1st, someone applies for a business license, then they're placing a responsibility on the county to see if the applicant is enrolled with the National Pollutant Discharge System program. Are they enrolled or are they exempt? And they're putting it on the county to verify this information. It looks quite a bit like an unfunded mandate to me, although they no doubt would say, oh, just raise your business license fee. But this has implications, given that the intent of that state law was to capture all those people that are not complying. That's exactly why they adopted it. There's a lot of people subject to the pollutant discharge program that have not come forward. So they're trying to capture them through the building permit. Given that that's on the books now, if we take that off the book and say, oh, we're not doing the business license, we will have to, I believe we will have to review the environmental implications of that, and is that a significant impact to the environment that would have to be addressed? So it starts to get pretty complicated. And I had a brief conversation with County Council on that topic. I don't know if he has anything he would care to add on that.
Mr. Chair, if I
County
may.
Counsel.
Thank you for Supervisor McCowan for bringing this to our attention. We have looked at it a little bit. I would say that before we would take that step, we need some additional time for further review on that issue. We have done some initial analysis, but I don't think we're at a point where we can give an answer just yet.
Correct, but potentially there are environmental implications that
Yes.
would require environmental review.
Yeah, yes. So the issue is one we'd want to look at before any action was taken.
Okay. Is there any public comment on this issue? Please state your name.
Malcolm McDonald, Little River. I kind of crossed the line in two ways that Supervisor Williams was talking about in the book writing thing. Yeah, I have a novel out that's named Outlaw Ford, and I wrote it in my own little corner of the kitchen, where I also write the AVA columns and articles. So if somebody came there, probably there's too many piles of paperwork from the Coast Hospital and old-timey 19th century history. Might be a fire hazard. I'm gonna have to clean some of that up. But a more realistic, that has some realistic nature, because I try to sell those through the independent bookstores like gallerybookshop.com in Mendocino, where you can get it as easily as anything on that corporate thing I won't mention. But I was reminded while this was being talked about, my father for years, decades and decades, spent 2 or 2.5 months a year creating wreaths and other Christmas ornaments for sale. He probably had a business license because a lot of that was done, Supervisor Brown may remember this from her Farm Bureau days, through the Farm Bureau, through the 4-H club back when the Oddfellows Hall still belonged to the 4-H club, as it should still today, but that's a separate issue. And nowadays, I know a person on the coast who makes beautiful wreaths and other Christmas things and holiday ornaments from, very similar to what my dad used to do. I doubt if he has a business license for it, because he also does little maintenance jobs here and there. You couldn't call him a landscaper, really. He dog sits for people, he house sits for people, he gets paid for all these things. He even cattle sits for somebody who will remain nameless. And that's the kind of real thing, and that there are almost endless examples like that in my district, which is Supervisor Williams' district, and I know in Supervisor Jurdy's district. So I hope that you folks aren't spending so much time in places like this and just extra meetings, which is commendable, all the meetings you guys go to, just by the list of ad hoc. This is a realistic thing of, I believe in regulating for public safety as much as possible. But this is a real thing. So please don't just think that it's a small issue. And I think that the CEO has it right, that it needs to be at least looked into.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any other comments from the floor? All right, back to the board. Is there a motion? Supervisor Williams.
I move we direct the executive office to look at ways to reduce business licensing burdens for small businesses, considering Lake County as an example, and return with options.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Supervisor McCowan.
What does reduce burdens mean? Streamline the process or eliminate the license?
Well, I think part of the research may uncover that the $40 is not the issue. It's the 3 to 5 months of waiting, or the $40 isn't the issue. It's having our planning and building department look at a structure that has nothing to do with the business. It's somebody who's out, selling goods they've produced away from home. We don't need to be inspecting their home for code violations. So I think reducing the burden is possibly removing the business license requirement, but also leaving the business license requirement in place, but making it less burdensome to acquire.
Okay. Supervisor McCowan.
Well, shouldn't we also be determining what all is tied to the business license? What other processes are implicated by having a business license or not having it?
Do you?
And I think that if we can go online, so is it a burden to have to come to Ukiah to apply for a license? All those kind of things. I think that's included in your motion, right?
Yep.
Okay. Understood?
So
We're good?
everything suggested here is encompassed in the motion.
Okay.
Is
Right.
that
It's-
agreeable to the maker of the motion?
I agree, and it sounds like the CEO took ample notes.
Okay. Okay, we're going to vote by the button.
Motion carries unanimously.